Hey everyone, welcome to the Charging Up Leadership podcast. Today's topic is tapping for freedom. I love EFT tapping. I first learned about EFT tapping about 17 years ago when I was at a coaching immersion weekend/retreat, and I've been hooked on it ever since. Now, in the early years, I used it extensively and exclusively on myself, my family, my friends. But the need was great, and as I was helping clients, of course, I increasingly incorporated tapping into my practice, which I would say is probably in the last 5 to 8 years, using it with clients. And I even reference it in my book, The Light Switch. It's page 154, where I talk about countering imbalance. So when we're imbalanced, EFT is a really terrific way to counter that. And then also to clean out backpacks. So really two great uses of this tool. So I thought I would ask a tapping expert to join me today who has a business background to help bring this topic to light, offer some insights, maybe even teach you how to use it. So today's special guest is Lisa Nichols. She is a business coach and a certified EFT tapping and matrix re-imprinting expert working with clients throughout North America. And Lisa has worked as a journalist, a bank vice president, an operations manager within a nonprofit. She's also written 2 parenting books, which have become Amazon bestsellers. Woo! And Lisa enjoys spending time with her family and friends and 3 cats and volunteering and traveling and doing what I think, quite frankly, is probably her favorite hobby of all. She's a taste tester for her husband's winery. Coming out of California, let's dive into this interview. Very interesting topic and probably something you will want to use in your life as well. So let's get to it. This is the Charging Up Leadership podcast, and I am your host, Heidi Frye. This podcast is all about energizing you from the inside out, inspiring you to plug in, light up, and just be the best version of yourself in how you live and lead. Well, welcome to the podcast, Lisa Nichols. I'm super excited to be talking to you, to be talking about EFT tapping. As I mentioned in the intro, I love it. I've just seen it benefit so many people, so many ways. It's just really terrific. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Heidi. So glad to be here.
Fantastic. So, I already gave you the credit of being an EFT tapping expert. And I guess, can we start out with leveraging your expertise a little bit? And just if you could give a definition of what EFT tapping is all about.
Oh, absolutely. Excuse me. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It is part of the world of energy psychology. It came up in the 80s. It actually came from another modality called thought field therapy. And then in the 80s, Roger Craig took thought field therapy and modified it and simplified it, and it became emotional freedom techniques, which is more commonly known as tapping because we literally tap on meridian points in our bodies. So it's been around 40 years. It's also very highly, of all the energy psychology and also psychology modalities, has many studies that show its efficacy, its efficiency, its effectiveness. Over 125 studies, including meta-analysis and other studies, have shown how effective it is in everything from reducing cortisol levels to releasing PTSD symptoms to helping with sugar cravings. So, and also physical issues. As you know, I'm sure a large percentage, maybe 70, 80% of illnesses stem from emotional trauma that we've had in our past and that we store in our bodies.
Right.
And so by working a lot on using EFT to work on the underlying belief systems and thought patterns, the negative head in our voice in our head, the trauma that we hold on to in our bodies can help with physical issues.
Mm.
So that's the background of it. And then what it is it's literally we're tapping on, like I said, we're tapping on meridian points in our body. And what's that doing is sending electromagnetic signals. It's like a percussion that's sending electrical signals to our energy systems in our body, which we have many. We have our the electromagnetical signals, we have brain waves, etc. And it's so to the electrical systems in our body and to that part of our brain, the amygdala, where our emotional memories are stored.
Mm.
Pardon?
The hijack.
Yes, the hijacking mechanism of our brain,
Mm-hmm.
which is there, of course, to protect us, but it's not very discerning. It doesn't know, for example, it doesn't know that something that happened 20 years ago is no longer happening. It thinks it still is, and it needs to protect you from it. And so it will, if let's say you were bitten by a black dog, from now until the rest of your life, unless you can shift it, your brain will go black dog, danger, danger, danger. So what tapping is doing is unhooking those emotional connections that your brain has to past events. So you may still know that those past events happen, like you were still bit by a black dog, but you no longer have the associated fear or worry or
Right.
other feelings that you might have around this traumatic event.
Well, that's funny because I had been bitten by a black dog.
Oh, no way.
Yes. I was, I don't know, 5, 4, somewhere in that neighborhood. And
Oh,
it was a friend's dog, and I was reaching to pet it, and he turned around and he bit off half my nose, actually. So yeah, it was a little traumatic. And
it's very traumatic.
yeah. And so I don't know if it's because my parents had a farm or because of that instance, but I just don't warm up to indoor dogs. I'm fine playing with them outside, but indoor, and I've done some tapping on it. I don't freak out around dogs, but there is something to be said like, meh, okay, so it is what it is. Okay, thank you so much for that explanation, because I learned the technique, but I didn't learn the stuff behind it. And so I usually end up just saying to people, it's a mix of Eastern pressure points with Western psychology. There we are. So, again, I'm using it with clients or my kids or whatever. I hadn't really thought of the bigger picture of, PTSD and, of course, cortisol levels. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, in
And
one study, the cortisol levels were reduced 44%. I mean, that's big. Like
yeah,
when the cortisol levels have hijacked you,
yeah,
and you can reduce it in a 10 to 15 minutes, and you can
yeah.
reduce it almost by half, that's big.
Huge, huge. Well, and I will say, when I was in college, I was dealing with migraine headaches, and I went to the psychology. Well, I went basically and had biofeedback done, and I could see breathing and controlling my blood pressure, or not my blood pressure, my heart rate. And it was really powerful to know I had control with my mind over my body. Right. So I think when I learned about EFT, it was just so, well, yeah, it was so acceptable in my own mind.
Sense to you. Yeah, it
Yeah,
really
yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense to you.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
sure.
So, have you used it on yourself? Do you use it with clients? I know I know you use it with clients. Just give me an idea of how you use it in your life.
Absolutely. I've been on my kind of personal healing journey, spiritual journey, you could say, since around 2000 when I got my second divorce.
Mm,
And this was when it kind of hit me, okay, I can't keep doing
mm,
things the way I'm doing them.
mm,
And so I started with a therapist, and we did some EMDR. I was very involved in a spiritual community for a long time, so I did a lot of different modalities, and I had progress, slow but sure kind of thing. And then in 2018, I decided to get my EFT tapping practitioner certifications. And it was funny that I did. I don't know why, because I'd heard about EFT in the mid 2000s and I didn't really think much of it. I was kind of like, oh, it doesn't, okay,
Yep.
whatever. But for some reason, I stayed on an email list for somebody that does tapping. And so what happened was I was in my last corporate job at a fintech company and they let me go. And I was so happy they let me go. It was like, I was miserable. They were miserable. I mean, it
Uh-huh.
just was not a good fit.
Yeah.
And so the very next day I woke up and I just thought, I'm going to I'm going to do some EFT training. I'm going to become a practitioner.
Hmm.
And I typically was a pretty good procrastinator and I wouldn't follow up on things like that. But truthfully, the voice in my head was so loud, I had to do it. So I did it. And it's been since then. I got my certification in January of 2019. And since then, everything has changed for me.
Mm.
My growth has just exploded. I've been able to overcome, I realized and was able to overcome social anxiety disorder. And I
Mm.
didn't even know I had it.
Wow.
But I've used it on everything from just last Thursday or Wednesday. I had an event happen with somebody, as things do. And that night, I was still feeling it. I was still feeling it in my body where I
Mm.
was just irritated and angry and just like, how
Yep.
it sits in
Yep.
you. And so I did some EFT tapping and it was gone. I just released it. And that was about 10 minutes of tapping.
Yeah.
So I still use it today. I swap with other practitioners. I do a lot of my business. And that's what I do in my coaching business
Hmm.
for women entrepreneurs, where I was a vice president at a bank doing project management, business analysis, communications, operations, all that kind of stuff. And so I know how to get things done and I coach my clients how to get things done in their business,
Hmm.
but that includes what's stopping you in your head.
Yeah.
What are you thinking in your head that stops you from being able to do them?
Hmm.
And let's just use procrastination as an example. If you procrastinate on something, it could be you go through your emails and make sure your email inbox is clean. Oh, I better do that before I get started on this other thing. Well, you're really procrastinating on this other thing.
Hmm.
And it's because your emails are easy to do and it makes you feel productive and like you're working on your business, but really the other thing is probably way more important and would actually move your business forward than, going through your emails. So there's many reasons why we might procrastinate. I'll give you an example from a past client of mine is when she was 2, she almost died and her mom became very overprotective
Hmm.
and she was basically micromanaging her daughter.
Hmm.
Well, everyone, including children, needs some sense of autonomy or control over their lives. And her kind of rebellious way of being able to take some control back from her mom was to become a procrastinator. And that's one thing, when you're a child, but when you're 40 and you still procrastinate because you're still
Right.
rebelling against your mom, and you
Right.
even procrastinate on things that you want for yourself or that things you tell yourself, you're like, no one's going to tell me what to do, even myself.
Mm.
So we did a lot of tapping on the underlying kind of instances of when she felt most controlled. And within 6 weeks, she was basically saying, I don't procrastinate anymore.
Wow. Wow.
So that's the kind
Congratulations.
of, oh, thank you. Yeah, thank
As a
you.
practitioner, when you see your clients grow, it's really cool. You were going to say.
Very cool.
Hmm.
Very cool. Yeah, just that's the kind of thing that can really hold us back in our business, whether it's not liking to be seen. If we were told you're too much when you're little, or told quiet down all the time, or if something happened like you did something wrong and your teacher held it up to the class and said, this is exactly how I told you not to do it, and embarrassed you in front of the class, you're going to want to hide. You're not going to
Right.
want to let people see you.
Hmm.
And so there's many, like I said, many reasons: overwhelm, fear of making the wrong decision, fear of making mistakes. There's lots of reasons why we might procrastinate. And working on those underlying reasons can eliminate the need to procrastinate, to feel safe, to feel in control.
Amen. I'd say a lot of those things are little moments in time. And I think of them as, my analogy is like they're a leaf getting stuck on you and they end up going into your backpack. And we end up with really heavy backpacks of limiting beliefs, right? And so I love that. I love that. So we're really saying the same thing in different ways, that we've seen the power of what a good backpack clean out will do for somebody, right? Oh, that's terrific. Okay, so in using EFT, is there a like a favorite, whether it's personal, friends, and I'm going to jump in with a few examples myself here in a second. Is there any favorite situation that, and maybe it was this woman right here where it was like, oh wow, where you didn't think they could transform so quickly, right? And EFT just like push them forward.
I've had clients who will work on something one week and the next week they came back and I'll say, okay, last week we worked on this. And they will literally tell me, I never believed that. That's not, it's so gone from their consciousness that, yeah.
That's awesome.
I can tell you, I volunteer sometimes at a healing night kind of thing. And this doesn't have to do with business, but this really stands out for me, where a lady probably in her 70s came that night, and I did some tapping on her. And she had divorced when her children were small, like 5, 7, something like that. And her ex-husband was kind of, not a nice person, and basically took the children from her and turned them against her. And so for 50 plus years,
oh my gosh,
she had a lot of guilt, feeling terrible about this loss of her children. And this was just at a healing night, so it wasn't even a full session. It was just a quick thing, but it just she was able to just let it go.
Wow.
Just in a quick session, whatever reason, she, must have been ready to let it go for one thing, but still just quick tapping, and she was able to let it go. So that stands out a lot for me. But in terms of clients, I have one right now who was raised by basically a narcissistic mom. And my client has been wanting to grow a business for 7 years. She knows the business. She loves the business. It's a network marketing business.
Okay.
For whatever reason, she just could not get herself to do it. She could not do it. So we've been working together, and bit by bit, and of course, all of these things touch on your personal life too. If you're procrastinating in your business, you're most likely procrastinating in your home life too. And so when you work on these things, other things shift. So she's had multiple personal things shift in her life, but also in her business. She always had this belief based on things her narcissistic mom would tell her that, oh, you have to be pretty and perky and Barbie-like for people to want to follow you. And that's not her personality. And so she now understands her own value and the type of people that would be drawn to her versus someone who is like the perky, happy kind. Right? And that there's someone for everyone. And she's been able to work. She was never able to work consistently on her business. And the last time I talked to her, she had worked consistently on her business 27 straight days in a row. And just letting go of, her family had slotted her into this like lovable loser category. And everything she did never measured up. I mean, it's hard to build a business if you believe nothing you do measures up.
Yeah.
So we've been just working through these kind of underlying messages that she got throughout her lifetime that was stopping her from being able to do what she really wanted to do.
Well, that's exactly the point. It's these underlying messages. So it's not even like the person, the parent usually had any intention of doing X, but the child perceived it as Y, and created a narrative that quote unquote damaged them for life. So it's not like the parents were bad parents. It's not like like I had one guy who, because of a parental divorce, the dad, I think, moved out and didn't spend as much time with him, of course, because he was trying to get his act together. And the client that I was working with felt very disconnected. I don't matter. You're not paying attention to me. And that did follow him through his career when he didn't have an attentive boss. He felt not, I don't know if I'd say not worthy, but that ultimately that's what it is, right? He didn't feel like he mattered. And once we cleared that up, and that did involve, tapping, I probably don't do as much of it as you do. I'm a closet tapper. But there are clients that they like it. I can see the effect of it, and we go there. And then other clients don't even know that that's a thing. So now they do. So it's really interesting how much those little underlying messages can throw a monkey wrench into a complete path of life, right? It's just.
And the interesting thing is, we're making decisions at that point in time with the experience and the knowledge that we have at that time. So if his parents were divorced at 5, he comes to believe this, that I'm not important. At 5 years old, that's how you see the world from then on. Yeah, and you're making decisions in your adult life based on a decision that you made when you were 5. And in my work, I find that it's often the beliefs that we create when we're between 3 and 5 and 12 and 13. Like, it's all ages. I mean, it could happen next year, but all ages. But those are the most common. And that's what EFT tapping does, is it helps to kind of let the younger self know that there's a different way of looking at this situation that happened. Yeah. And that most of the time it actually had nothing to do with us, especially when it has with our parents, because they were just doing the best they could based on their wounds and not even really ever thinking about the impact on their children.
Sure.
Don't do that. And then there's also an advanced technique called matrix re-imprinting that's very powerful, that works with the younger self at the point in time when the trauma happened. In EFT, we say that trauma capsules are created. And so our body basically like encapsulates this point in time, and it holds on to it and it relives it over and over and over again because it's trying to protect you. But by doing the EFT tapping and the matrix re-imprinting, we get to go back and show the younger self that the trauma is over. You can move on. You can have a different way of seeing it, et cetera. And just, it lets the younger self know that they're safe now.
And the image I have as you are saying that is like touching a hot stove. It only takes one time and it's not going to happen again, right? So one traumatic event, even though it isn't traumatic to other people, to you, it's how you process it, where it now colors the way you see and think and be, right?
Exactly.
So that I hadn't heard that term before. Matrix reprinting, is that what you said?
Re-imprinting.
Re-imprinting. Okay. And then so what does that entail? Is that a version of a tapping technique, or is that combining the two together?
It's an advanced technique, and it's literally where you are bring to mind the younger self at the point in time when the trauma happened. And you're like the Matrix, if you think about the Matrix in the show, right? You literally work in the Matrix to help that younger self at that point in time when the trauma happened. And one of the things that's interesting about this is your younger self has their own thoughts and beliefs and feelings around this event. And you're an adult, so you might have, you might have justified it. You might have explained it away. You might have piled more thoughts and more beliefs on top of it. But by going back to kind of the original point in time when the trauma happens, that younger self, and the word re-imprinting comes from the fact that we ask the younger self, after we do tapping on them, we ask them, how would you like this picture to change? And because it's their world, they get to choose anything they want.
Yeah.
So if that point in time where the father, your client, the father wasn't around very much, the client could actually say, I want my dad to be there and I want him to hold me and I want him to explain to me that I'm still important, I still matter, but he needs to spend a little bit of time getting his life together. And then we imprint that new picture into the body. We have a process of just imagining it imprinting into the cells of the body. We also ask them at this point in time, like, what new belief do you have? And a lot of times people will go from something like, I'm not important, or I'm not worthy, or whatever it is, to I'm just as important as anyone else, or some other much more empowering and affirming belief. And then, so we imprint the new picture and the new belief in the body, and that becomes your younger self's new reality through tapping.
And it's funny because if anyone listening thinks that this is, woo-woo or not effective, I could just talk about this all day long. The situations that I've encountered with myself, I mean, easy ones are with my family. Okay, I'll tell you one example. My son had a little boy over for a sleepover, and the parents, before, when they were dropping him off, they said, he's never made it through a sleepover. So probably around 11 o'clock, he's going to call and we're going to have to come pick him up. And I was like, no, I can handle this. And they're like, are you sure? I said, yeah. I didn't know why I said that, but I said that. And I said, so when he calls, because I'll let him call, of course, but when he calls, just tell him no. She goes, are you kidding? Should I really do that? I said, yeah. She goes, oh my gosh. Okay. So 10:30, 11 o'clock, he's like, I want to call my mom and dad. I think I need to go home. So he called and they said no, at which point he was dumbfounded. And I said, you know what? That's okay, because I have something that we could do to help you, I think. And I tapped with him. So he stayed over. It was great. 6 months later, my son had him over again. And I was saying goodnight to the boys and, like, okay, boys, anything else? And I was ready to shut the door. And he said, Mrs. Frye. And I said, oh, yeah, sure. What is it? He said, do you think that you could tap with me before you leave, or, before we go to bed? And I was like, oh, my gosh, the idea that 6 months later he remembered tapping, wanted it, and knew that it was a strategy for success was pretty amazing. So, and even big boys and women, in corporate, in work, it always comes down to this worthiness issue. Okay, I'm just going to go right to the punchline, right? It's always a worthiness issue, but sometimes it's their parent told them to be strong, so they become so strong that they don't let anybody help them. Or their parent tells them to be humble. They become so humble that they don't talk about their accomplishments, or, and it's just one example after another. Like I said, I could talk for a long time on this topic because it's been so beneficial and critical for family, friends. So I have a friend, and we're not done yet. So we're in the middle of this. And he has, well, I don't want to expose him. I'm not going to talk about it. He has what looks like a physical issue that his mother and I believe is an emotional issue. And so we're going down the path of emotional freedom technique. And I expect, because we've already seen a little slight shift. So we'll see how it goes. Stay tuned. Okay.
I was going to say that it's also effective for things that happen more recently. It's not just like from past events. For example, last year I worked with a client who has her own small business, and she had hired someone, and the way this person left kind of shook my client's confidence in hiring and being able to hire the right kind of person. And she was very experienced at it, but all of a sudden she just started questioning herself, doubting herself. And so we did tapping to kind of uncover, but then also shift what happened when that client, employee left, so that she could gain her confidence in this area. And so it's very flexible and broad in terms of the types of things that it can help with. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, because yes, we did dive into the past wounds stuff, but there is so much in the present, like a relationship with believing that your boss, you have this doggone it, my boss doesn't see me the way I need to be seen. And so there's this anger and not allowing themselves to connect with their upline, right? And so they have to tap out this notion that they're being, being frowned upon or being held back intentionally, or just even relationships where people aren't getting along and there's a preconceived notion. And yeah, it's really powerful stuff. So do you think there's any way you could show us how to tap?
You have a specific little something you might want to tap on that might be helpful for the listeners?
I don't know that I do, but earlier you brought up that topic, which when you landed on it, I thought it was funny because it was pretty darn universal. And that is procrastination. As soon as you said it, I thought of somebody in my life that has that issue. So can we go there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that we could even tap on is the idea that you were born a procrastinator. I was a chronic procrastinator, and it just felt like that's just who I was. I was born that way. I'd always be that way. There wasn't anything I could do about it. It was a flaw within myself. And that is not true. Most people will think they're lazy, or they, if you Google or even go into Chat GPT and say, how do I stop procrastinating? They will give you time management techniques. For example, the Pomodoro method, where you set your timer for 15 minutes and then, you go and have a 7-minute break and then do it over and over again. Or you eliminate distractions in your environment, or you plan out your day, and you block off time.
Sure.
Those are time management techniques, and they may help with your procrastination for a period of time, but eventually the underlying reasons that drive you to procrastinate will rear their ugly heads again. And then sometimes you might even feel worse, because then you're like, see, I knew I was a procrastinator. See, I knew I couldn't get rid of it. I knew I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's confirmation. And so we could do a little tapping around, I am not a procrastinator. That's just procrastination is a coping mechanism.
Speaking of which, have you ever heard of the Enneagram? So it's funny because I do quite a bit with the Enneagram, and theoretically, I mean, practically, the way the assessment is designed, it is showing you what your coping mechanism was as a child. You had a learned behavior of how to get love, right? So if you were a 2, you became so darn helpful, no one could see the cracks in your veneer or in your underlying person. And so I could see where, like, tapping or the matrix re-imprinting is a really great partnership or a solving, right, or allowing the Enneagram person to grow into, because that's the point of an Enneagram, is to become more colorful, right? So I meant to say that earlier. Okay, so I'm going to change my view so that you're the speaker instead of us being side by side. I want you to be the one doing your thing, and I'll play along.
I'm just going to walk through really quickly a few of the mechanics so that people feel more comfortable, and then we'll actually learn the tapping by doing. So we always start by, once we identify the issue we're working on, we always start by identifying the scale on which the intensity of the emotions that we have around this event. So on a scale of 0 to 10, and 0 meaning no intensity, no impact, and 10 being highly intense. Mm-hmm. So just kind of think about to yourself, on a scale of 0 to 10, how do I feel and how much do I believe that I was born a procrastinator and I can't change it? Mm-hmm. So let's say the number is a 7. Mm-hmm. Or let's say we'll pick one as 7.
Okay.
So once you have that, then you talk about, or if you're working with a practitioner, you're going to talk to the practitioner. If you're doing this on your own, it's best to kind of write down, but then just ask yourself, what comes up for me when I think about this? What am I feeling about this? Where do I feel this? Like for me, it's always in the solar plexus. And so, and let's say, how do I feel about being a procrastinator? Well, it's frustrating. I hate it. I want to do what I want to do and not be stuck sitting on the couch wondering why can't I get off this darn couch and go do what I want to do? When you're late all the time, I'm embarrassed. If you're one of the procrastinators who is being late a lot, I'm embarrassed. I feel like I have to justify myself. If I forget things, like I'm supposed to go to a client meeting and I wait to the last minute and I end up forgetting things I'm supposed to bring, I'm embarrassed, humiliated, I feel ashamed. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen. So usually with EFT, it's best to pick like a specific instance. So let's use the thing where you're late to a client meeting, so you forget. So we'll just use that as an example. Mm-hmm. And then, so you kind of think through all that you can around, what do I think? What do I feel around this? And then you start tapping. And the first thing you do is you tap on the side of your hand below the little finger, on the fleshy part below the little finger. And you can use either hand, it doesn't matter. And some points you may even use both hands. A lot of people will use both hands or use points. So when you just tap 2 or 3 fingers, hard enough to feel it, it doesn't have to be hard, whatever feels comfortable to you. And the setup statement always begins even though. And then you state the problem that you're working on. And then you finish with a statement that is acknowledging this is what's true for you right now, and that you just accept it. This is just the truth, and you accept it. And one thing I do want to say before we go into tapping is, if people are really into the law of attraction, and I've had clients like this, which is why I'm bringing it up. Because law of attraction teaches you, if you focus on negative, then you'll get the negative. And you should always kind of focus on the positive. So in this case, we want to address the negative. We want to talk about the negative to really tell our brain, this is what we're working on. This is what we believe to be true in our bones and in our cells right now. And we're bringing it to the light of day. As we know, when there are problems, that if they're hidden, if they're secret, they start to gain power. But when they come out to the light of day, a lot of times the power is taken from them. I've had clients say, this saying it out loud made me realize how ridiculous it was.
Have you ever seen where the electric company comes and they put all these flags in your lawn because they're letting you know where the wire is because you're having some work done? That's the image I get when you're naming it. You're not focusing on the negative, you're flagging all the spots within you that need to be cleared out, right?
Oh, that's a great image for that. That's a really good example. Yes, exactly. So after the setup statement, so let me give the example then. Okay. So we would say something like, even though I was late to my appointment with my client because I waited until the last minute, I kept working even when I knew I needed to leave. And then I ran out the door and I forgot to bring this thing I really, really needed to bring. And it was so embarrassing. I deeply love and completely accept myself. So that last statement that I used, I completely love and really love and completely accept myself. It's just one I commonly use, but there are many that you can use. You could just say, I honor, this is how I feel right now. You could say, I'm open to coming to peace around this. I forgive myself as best I can. There's different ways that you can say that ending statement, but you're basically just acknowledging this is what's true in the moment. Okay. So you can do the setup statement. A lot of practitioners do it 3 times. I was trained to do it once, so I do it once. And then you go into doing a round of tapping, and I start at the top of the head. A lot of practitioners start at the top of the eye, and again, it doesn't matter. It's very flexible. So as you're doing this round of tapping, you're talking about the problem that you have, and so you don't have to remember these because we'll do the tapping together. But I start at the top of the head. The top of the eye is on the eyebrow, right next to the nose. So not above the eyebrow, but right next to the nose, literally on the eyebrow. Mm. Then you go to the side of the eye, the little bone on the side of the eye, under the eye, under the nose, the crease of the chin. And the collarbone point is not right on the collarbone, like here's my bone, but if you slip down just like an inch or so, half an inch, an inch, there's a soft spot, a little valley there, and that's the point to tap on. This is a very important point because it's associated with the thymus gland, which is a master gland in the body. Mm-hmm. So then I also do the bottom of the ribs. Not all practitioners do.
Okay. On the outside, because I can't see far that down. Are you?
Oh, gotcha. I'm just literally on the bottom of the ribs.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, I hadn't seen anyone do that one before. Mm-hmm.
It's associated with the liver. The liver is such an important gland. And then under the arm, which is 3 to 4 inches below your armpit.
Yeah.
And then I also do the top of the wrist and the bottom of the wrist.
Okay.
And then and then you start at the top of the head again. So as you're tapping, like I said, you're talking about this issue. And one of the key points in tapping is to make sure that you address as much of the feelings and thoughts and beliefs and things that you have about this instance in your life.
Sure.
And you can just keep tapping basically until you run out of things to say, or until you feel a shift.
Yeah.
Or until you start to feel like you're just repeating yourself. And then once you kind of go through all the negative things, there's something called a reframe that you can go into. And it's really important to jump to the reframe first. Mm-hmm. But the reframe is a way to tell your brain there are other ways, other perspectives that you can view this event that happened. Mm-hmm. And the word maybe is a very good word to use in this instance. Because it could be, like if you were dealing with something with your parent, maybe they didn't mean to hurt me. Mm-hmm. Maybe they were just doing the best they could. Mm-hmm. Maybe they actually meant to support me. Like a lot of times, some parents will criticize their kids, and it's a way to try to
make them better.
Make them better. Maybe they meant to support me. There's different ways that you can view whatever is going on.
Sure.
Or happened. So that's what the reframe is like. And again, you kind of just tap till you're kind of done. Mm. And then after you're done tapping, look at your number again, the 0 to 10. And once in a great while, the number will go up. And what this is it's just kind of uncovering what's underneath. Like maybe you've convinced yourself you're okay, or maybe, it's no big deal. But it's kind of getting to your true feelings around it, or you've worked on for a layer and you're getting to like the layer.
Sure.
So it's okay if the number goes up. It happens once in a while, but generally the number will go down. And so let's say the 7 that we had earlier went down to a 4. That's great. That's progress. And so then you ask yourself, what's still there? What
I like
am I
that.
still feeling? And it's a lot of times, sometimes some things that you first tapped on will still be there because they just didn't get tapped on enough. But often it's new things that come up. Like you were really angry about something and you tap through the anger and then you realize that you're hurt. And the hurt is really the underlying thing that's going on that caused it. So then you do some more tapping and you basically keep tapping until you basically get to a 0 or a 1. Usually you can get to a 0.
Wow.
And then what this means is you're basically neutral to the event. Like again, you know that you got bit by a black dog, but you no longer have feelings or fear or anything around it. So that's how.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's reminding me of when I first learned tapping, and we weren't talking about all the emotions. It was literally like the same sentence for 1 round, 2 round, and then we change it slightly. So it's evolved so much since then. My daughter came home from science camp, and she saw me packing. We were going away for the weekend, and she started crying. She was like, "How could you be leaving?" I said, "We talked about this, honey, and we're going away for the weekend, and Grandma's here to watch you." And she just cried and cried, inconsolable, for about half an hour. And then I thought, wait a minute, I can do tapping with her. So I set her on my lap. I had her facing me because she wanted none of it. Like, get away from me. And I just tapped on her face and I talked through the process as if I was her, quite frankly. And I got through with a few rounds. And then I said, well, how do you feel? And she said, nothing. It's just that I'm so tired. And then she started crying about how tired she was. So then I tapped about how tired she was. And there might have been one other layer. And then I remember saying, well, now what? And she was like, well, do you think Grandma's going to help me make some doll clothes? And she just jumped off my lap and went downstairs and had a great weekend with her grandmother. And that I was sold. I was sold because I saw the power, not of forgetting the issue, but the emotion tied to it. And what is conflict? The definition of conflict is 2 divergent ideas plus emotion. So if you take away the emotion, you just have 2 ideas, right? The conflict is gone. It doesn't necessarily apply to my daughter's situation, but yeah, you understand. Emotion is so powerful.
And I would say there are still practitioners that do EFT tapping the way that you mentioned it. I've seen it done both ways.
Yeah.
So it just, the training that you get and the school that you go to.
Well, and I do like my newer way, which is more fluid and more, intuitive, I suppose I would say, as things are emerging. It's pretty cool.
It is very cool. And sometimes, as a practitioner, and I'm saying the things that come up for me while we're tapping, I can see a lot of times on my client's face where I just say something and they kind of go, and it just hits them. And they're like, and you just know that, you just got that core thing, that little trigger that changes everything for them. Yes. Okay. So should we do a quick tapping around procrastination and believing that you're a procrastinator?
That is up to you, unless I wish I could come up with like a real one for me, but I can't in the moment, quite frankly, probably because I've done so much tapping myself. So yeah, let's do it. Okay. I didn't think you were going to go down that road, but yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So repeat after me. You're going to follow along with me and repeat after me, unless something is more true for you, and then say what's true for you. Like again, the example of I'm really angry, but really you're hurt, then say I'm really hurt. Okay. So we'll just do a couple of rounds and just see if we can shift that belief that I am a procrastinator.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead. You'll be my person to follow after me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's start on the side of the hand. Even though I believe I was born a procrastinator.
Even though I'm sorry, you want me to say it out loud too, right? Yes.
Please.
Even though I believe I was
Believe I was born a procrastinator.
procrastinator.
It's just who I am.
It's just who I am.
And I will always be a procrastinator.
And I will always be a procrastinator.
I deeply love and completely accept myself.
I deeply love and completely accept myself.
I'm a procrastinator. Top of the head. I'm a procrastinator.
I'm a procrastinator.
Top of the eye. I always have been.
I always have been.
Side of the eye. I always will be.
I always will be.
Under the eye. I can't remember a time when I didn't procrastinate.
I can't remember a time when I didn't procrastinate.
Under the nose. I procrastinate even on things I could do easily.
I procrastinate on things I could do easily.
On the chin, because I'm a procrastinator.
Because I'm a procrastinator.
The collarbone. I'm always mad at myself after I procrastinate.
I'm always mad at myself after I procrastinate.
Because what I procrastinated on didn't take hardly any time to do.
Because what I procrastinated on hardly took any time at all. Or, yeah.
Yeah, at all. Yeah, you say your own words. That's great. Bottom of the ribs. I just can't help it.
I just can't help it.
They are. I just feel this resistance in my body when I need to do something.
I just feel this resistance in my body when I'm supposed to do something.
The top of the wrist. I don't know how to overcome it.
I don't know how to overcome it.
Bottom of the wrist. It's such a strong, intense feeling within me.
It's such a strong and intense feeling.
Must be lazy.
I must be lazy.
Yeah, I must have just been born that way.
Oh, I must. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, I must just be born that way.
And the eye. I've even been called lazy.
I've even been called lazy.
Or the eye. When I am so stuck in procrastination.
When I am so stuck in procrastination.
Under the nose. I don't even understand why.
I don't even understand why.
The chin. It's so frustrating.
It is so frustrating.
Sometimes on the collarbone, and this was true for me when I was a procrastinator, but sometimes I'm so frustrated I cry.
Sometimes I'm so frustrated I cry.
Bottom of the ribs. Why can't I just do things?
Why can't I just do things?
Under the arm. Other people do.
Other people do.
Top of the wrist. What's wrong with me?
What is wrong with me?
Bottom of the wrist. Will I always be this way?
Will I always be this way?
Top of the head. I just can't see a way out of it.
I just can't see a way out of it.
Top of the eye. But what if this isn't true?
But what if this isn't true?
Out of the eye. What if I started procrastinating as a coping mechanism?
What if I started procrastinating as a coping mechanism?
Under the eye. Because as a child, I didn't know how to deal with what was going on around me.
Because as a child, I didn't know how to deal with what was going on around me.
Under the nose. I didn't know how to deal with emotions that I was having.
I didn't know how to deal with the emotions I was having.
And so my body decided to protect me.
My body decided to protect me.
By stopping me from taking action or being seen or whatever the issue is. But you can just say to like just by stopping me from taking action.
Me from moving forward, taking action, advancing in my own life, making progress.
Bottom of the ribs. I learned when I was young that it was dangerous to do that.
I learned when I was young it was dangerous to do that.
I wasn't safe.
I wasn't safe.
Bottom of the under the arm. So I was really pretty smart coming up with this way to protect myself.
So I was pretty smart coming up with this way to protect myself.
Top of the wrist. Given that I was a child, that makes sense to me.
Given that I was a child, this makes sense to me.
Bottom of the wrist. But I don't want to hold on to it anymore.
But I don't want to hold on to it anymore.
Top of the head. It doesn't serve me.
It doesn't serve me.
Top of the eye. I can choose a different belief.
I can choose a different belief.
Top of the eye. I can choose to believe that I'm not a procrastinator.
I can choose to believe I'm not a procrastinator.
Near the eye. I can choose to believe that I can shift this pattern that I have.
I can choose to believe I can shift this pattern that I have.
Near the nose. Procrastination has had a pretty strong grip on me.
Procrastination has had a pretty strong grip on me.
In the chin. I'm calling its bluff.
I am calling its bluff.
Collarbone.
Enough. Enough. I'm done with procrastination.
Exactly. So I didn't ask you your number at the beginning. I don't even know if you believed you were a procrastinator, but hopefully everyone did a number, and then they can ask right now, okay, now how much do I believe this this concept that I'm a procrastinator? And hopefully it went down.
Mm-hmm. I meant enough with procrastination. I didn't mean enough stopping you.
Oh, I know.
It's interesting when I tap, and I don't know why it is, or if I'm an empath, I've been told that before, or spongy tissue allows me to feel what other people are feeling, which is empathic. But I start yawning, and when people are releasing, even outside of tapping, they're just having an aha. I start yawning, and one person said to me, wow, you must really be tired. I'm like, no, it's because you're making progress.
Yes, it's energy releasing.
Yeah. So I didn't identify with the topic per se, but I was definitely feeling energy moving. So there's probably something stuck in there on certain topics, so. That was so cool. Well, there were a couple new things that I don't normally do. I don't do the wrist, so I like that a lot. I could feel this one especially. I really like that one. And there was another. Oh, I don't start at the head. I start, I like that too. It feels very centering. And well, quite frankly, to some degree, it was really cool that you validated what I've instinctually, some of the long routes I've taken and have found to be pretty effective. So terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I sure hope now if people are listening that they got something out of it, but they can go to YouTube, to my channel. It'll be the first time that I posted a podcast in video, but I thought this one would be worthy of that because it needs to be seen, I think, to really get the impact of it, right? So tell us, how can people find you? And I know you were talking about, you had a worksheet, and I know you sent it to me for me to give. I want people to reach out to you. I'll also post it, but how can people find you, reach with you, work with you? Because you're doing great work.
Well, my website is Tapping Into Your True Self, and they can reach out to me at Lisa at Tapping Into Your True Self. I'm on Instagram, Tapping Into Your True Self, and Facebook is actually my first name. I have a group, Lisa Tapping Into Your True Self, and a page. And then they can also find me at Lisa Gay Nichols. There's a very famous Lisa Nichols that's not me, yes. And so it's with my middle name Gay. And I live in the Bay Area near San Francisco, but I work with people on Zoom. I always did, even before the pandemic,
Okay.
really all over the world. I even worked with somebody in China one time. That was pretty exciting.
Oh, that is exciting. Okay. And just because I want to make sure that whatever way you'd prefer people contact you, um, if you can give the spelling on whatever that, if whether it's the email or one of your pages, then
Okay. Yes. So Lisa is Lisa and then at, I know it's long, tapping, like EFT tapping
tapping
into
TAPINGINTO. Okay.
your YOUR true TRUE self SELF.com.
Perfect. Well, it says it all though, doesn't it? Yeah.
It does.
Ah, that felt good. All right. Any words of wisdom that you want to impart to the listeners? Otherwise, I'm very grateful for your time today. But I would love to hear how do people get started with this?
Well, I did want to acknowledge that even though you said you didn't necessarily connect with the topic, you still feel better.
Mhm.
It just brings you into your body. It just realigns the energy systems in your body so that I know I wrote 2 books, they're parenting books with around tapping. And so I was tapping as I was creating the scripts in the books. And so I wrote the book in about my first book in about 10 days. And so I wrote like 24 different tapping scripts in 10 days. I tell you, I I don't think I've ever felt better in my body after all that tapping. I felt both grounded in my body and yet energized and like fizzy with energy. It was just so wonderful. So it does really bring you into your yourself. And so the last thing I would say to get started is you can do tapping at home, and that's what the worksheet that I told you about is. It walks through the illustration of how to do it and where the tapping parts are, and then on the back is a little worksheet where you can write down what is my issue, what am I feeling, what comes up for me, what's my initial number, and then what's my number after I tap, and kind of what thoughts came up for me. So you could use that part for writing down what's still there so that you can do another tapping round. And so if you're having a hard time tapping, there's a little trick. It's sort of like the Pomodoro technique that I talked about, which is, you can set your timer for 10 minutes, especially if you feel like I don't have time to tap.
Yeah.
You can set your timer for 10 minutes, tap for 10 minutes. When it goes off, see where you're at. And then just set it for 5 minutes, do 5 more minutes and see, just do your little 5 minute things. And within a couple of sessions, you should feel a lot different.
Mm.
So tapping with a practitioner is very helpful because they have that different perspective. And sometimes it's hard to see our own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I would recommend working with a practitioner, is especially if you are really stuck with something, you're just not able to get through it on your own, and could use a different perspective or somebody who has done tapping a lot more and has seen it all, kind of, could say. So, but tapping at home can be very effective.
Mm-hmm. I love that about the having a person guiding you. I can see exactly what you're talking about, because my clients will say, wow, it's all true. I didn't know where that was coming from. But yeah, because to some degree you're relying on your intuition, which you're feeling from the client. Well, thank you so much. I love this topic. You're going to say something else.
I know, we could talk forever, right?
Yeah, we could.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, and sometimes you just see it from the outside. When you're the practitioner, you see it from the outside, and sometimes it's just, and that, again, because we don't see our own stuff, sometimes it's hard to see. And so it's nice to have someone else. And like you said earlier, it's confirmation and validation that you're not crazy, that there is real reasons why you feel the way you feel. And it just really helps to feel seen.
All of that. And I will say that I can feel my breathing is deeper just from what we did, even though I didn't mentally connect with that topic. So it's just it's a really special technique and a special tool, and it's used for so much, for everything from procrastination, obviously, to weight loss, to underlying issues, to backpack clean out, to in the moment, stuff. So like I said, I could go on and on and on. Like, how many times did one of my kids call when they were at a sleepover because they needed to get some tapping over the phone so they could stay themselves? So
cool.
yeah, it's been a fun tool. Okay, well, like I said, you said we could talk on and on and on. We both are big lovers of EFT tapping, and I love that you introduced me to this matrix re-imprinting. That is so cool. And if anyone wants to pursue this and discover and check this out, give Lisa a call, and all the best to you for sure. Continued success, and all the best to the listeners. I hope that for sure they learned something here. Thank you for that. And they get cleaned up, that they release their junk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, Heidi. And I appreciate that you're putting this out into the world and supporting people where they need support.
I'm actually surprised myself that I would dare to show this to the world, that, I'm exposing a part of myself that I probably have kept behind closed doors. Maybe not closed doors, but not super open ones. So here we go. Yeah.
Good job. Way to go.
All right. Have a great one. Talk to you later. Thank you again for being on the podcast. Hey, everyone. Ready for a quick debrief? I would like to go over the actual tapping technique so you can do that at home, and also just touch on a couple of concepts. She did such a great job explaining it that I don't know that there's much need for a debrief. I love the terms. I hadn't heard these before: energy psychology and thought field therapy. I thought those were really nice ways to talk about EFT/emotional freedom technique in new ways, in case you wanted to do some research or look something up. And then the results are pretty astounding. And I've seen that myself with clients, like I said, and family and friends. So for sure, I hope that you learn how to do tapping. All right. So, and of course, the matrix re-imprinting is an important component. I do a version of that. Regardless, it's super important. Right? Okay, so we're going to start off with this tapping at the fleshy part of the hand. And that is to ground your big statement. And your big statement is something like, even though I blank, X, whatever you want to fill in, even though I blank, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And there are versions of that last portion. So settle on what feels true for you. And that's going to be, and I do it 3 times. She does it once, whatever. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And then you're going to start out, and people will ask me, how many fingers, how much do I tap? It's a little intuitive because I do it with 3 fingers. And you just tap, 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 tap until you're ready to move on. Sometimes a certain spot, I'll end up spending a lot of time in that spot. Yeah, I know, my hair, like I'm tapping my hair down here. So the first one is at the top of the head. The second one is in the inner part of the eyebrow. And then the third one, 1, 2, 3. Third one is on the outside of the eye. And then the fourth one is right under the eye cap, like it's in the bottom of the eye cavity, right there at the bone. And then the fifth one is under the nose. The sixth one is right here, that crease under the mouth and at the chin. Now 7, I normally do one spot. I call it the necklace point. And she does that same
that same level, but using two hands below the clavicle or the collarbone. All right. And then the new one that I heard her talk about was at the bottom of the diaphragm, or the diaphragm, I should say, bottom of the lungs, bottom of the rib cage. And then the other new one for me was, she said, under, what was it? Top of the wrist and bottom of the wrist. And I would say top of the wrist or on the upside of the wrist, and then the bottom of the wrist, which I'd also say is the underside of the wrist. And then you're back at the top, right? So again, top of the head, eyebrow, outer eye, under the nose, under the chin, necklace point, or, under the collarbone, and then diaphragm and wrists, up side and underside, and then back to the top of the head. And then the last part, number one, you're going to assess your number. Number two, you're going to do this fleshy part of the hand, and you are going to do your grounding statement. Then you're going to talk about the emotions that you're feeling related to this, and then you will reframe, and then reassess your number, and then ask yourself what's still there. That is it. So hope you enjoyed this, and hope you have a great rest of the day. And I thought this was a great way. I'm dropping this right here at the beginning of the new year, because I think it's a great way to clean out your backpack and get going on the new version of you. And on that note, have a great rest of the day.
You have been listening to the Charging Up Leadership podcast, and I am your host, Heidi Frye, charged up, plugged in, and sending you energy, light, and love. Find me at HeidiFrye.com. And don't forget to check out my book, The Light Switch, available on Amazon, in your local bookstores, or on my website. The Charging Up Leadership podcast is created, hosted, and produced by Heidi Frye. Theme music is by E.F.T. from Pixabay.